thank goodness. Thank goodness there are no censors. And
that is the best thing about this country.
It is the best thing.
Because somewhere contained in all this vile, derogatory stuff, maybe some kernels of truth. We got a voicemail from a lady who apparently was a devout Catholic and basically said, it is really wrong to disparage religion.
Her religion.
Her religion. And I guess you wouldn't mind disparaging the Muslim religions we're getting ready to do. And the answer to that is, this is not just to make you feel bad. There is something to this. Unless we're able to discuss things, unless we're able to talk about the tenets of this religion being somewhat goofy, as you're prepared to do about Mormonism, or the harm that's been done in the name of religion, when you have something that's taboo, when you have something that may not be discussed, that's wrong, and it leads to problems. For years, you couldn't challenge. I mean, if you challenged, for example, the idea that the sun revolved around the earth, you didn't have a long life expectancy.
No.
And now we get to challenge it. And I say we're much better off with the right to question anybody's religion. If you can get up in public spaces and say, God bless us, and we call the blessings of God down on us, and God's looking over us, fine, you get to say that. But maybe somebody else ought to get to say, not so fast, And that's what it's about. And I'm sorry that this lady took such offense by it. She said, we need a conversion. Well, maybe you need something. Maybe you need to take a hard look at it.
The problem started when you talked about the Pope's red slippers, his Prada slippers or Prada slippers. When you said that, you crossed the line.
You can't talk about slippers.
No, but that was... It was like an unnecessary cut, because he's got red slippers. What difference does it make?
If somebody from the church comes around and says, the church has been hurt very badly by having to pay all this money for the priests molesting the kids and stuff, and we need to raise a bunch of money, and the Catholics certainly do. I mean, Catholic Social Services has done really great work. Maybe it'd be nice to point out, how about that big ring he's got? Maybe he could sell that and raise a few bucks, all the hard work. And that he has some little dude in Italy at some enormous expense making these special red slippers.
Yeah. You're so far over this line that we can't come back.
The red slippers kind of reminds you of the Wizard of Oz, which kind of reminds you of Pope Ratzinger.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it does.
He is like the Wizard of Oz.
Do you have any other comments? Because
I got loads of.
I can tell you right now, the voicemail messages, I have to hear them first. You see, I have to clear these calls. I have to listen to this. This vitriolic attack, usually on me. They say both of you are doing that.
Yeah, and you weren't. Well, that's really unfair.
I didn't do anything. I just show up here.
But this attack is not saying you're wrong. We ought to shut down your churches and kill you, which is what they do in the Middle East. You're in the wrong religion, blasphemy, off you go. Yeah. I wouldn't harm anybody. I really enjoy a lot of church. Now I'm kind of against the tax breaks. But you should be absolutely free to practice whatever religion you want, believe whatever you want, but the idea that somebody can counter some of the precepts of the religion shouldn't be that threatening to you. If it's a real good religion, let's discuss it. Go back to St. Augustine. Well, they all discussed the proofs of God. Is there a God? Why do we believe this? Well, they discussed it. Why can't we discuss it?
I agree with that. So do you have some other information for us on the Muslim problem?
Yes. Well, here is, first of all, I looked on YouTube at the offensive anti-prophet.
Yeah.
It is the lamest, stupidest thing you've ever heard. I mean, this is like a high school, low-budget movie where he does mock the Muslim religion. Okay. And the fact that, and then it's interesting to me that this is so offensive nobody ought to see it, but they translate it into Arabic. To stir people up.
No, not they.
If the imams, and then after Friday prayers, which is a bit of an irony. After Sunday prayers, you're probably feeling a little more tolerant and generous and altruistic. After Friday prayers, apparently they're looking for somebody to kill. They're all out there, burn, death to America. it's certainly not a surprise after what we saw about Salman Rushdie and the fatwa, and some tiny little European country makes this little cartoon of the Prophet, and so the proper response to that is to burn everything in sight. It's a little bit of an overreaction, but not surprising because they've done it for a long time. What they've done is give every nutcase, like the preacher in Florida, who with a flock you could fit in a station wagon, gets all kinds of international attention by threatening to burn the Quran, and high U.S. officials call him up and plead with him not to burn that book. I mean, why don't you plead with the Afghans not to cut women's noses off when they don't want to go with some 60-year-old creep who's been assigned to them as a husband? Well, they chop her nose off and beat her to death. That's okay. We're not complaining about that. We're complaining about this goofy preacher who's going to burn a book in Pakistan. This retarded girl supposedly burned some of the Quran. By mistake, they wanted to stone her. Now, call this a religion of peace if you want. A lot of the adherents are not particularly peaceful. None of that is a surprise. It's been going on for years. Here is the thing that I find reprehensible, and I can prove to you why it's wrong. This is the official announcement from the United States. The Embassy of the United States in Cairo condemns the continuing efforts by misguided individuals, love this language, to hurt the religious feelings of Muslims. This is ridiculous. As we condemn efforts to offend believers of all religions. Today, the 11th anniversary of September 11th terrorist attacks, Americans are honoring our patriots who serve our nation. Respect for religious belief is a cornerstone of democracy. We firmly reject. Then Hillary Clinton, after the death in Libya, if I've got it right, says that this film, this video, was disgusting and reprehensible. Okay. Now, this is the research. If you do just a little research, and all you need is YouTube, to see if Christianity has been mocked, you don't have to look very far. I mean, Madonna has this whole, it looks like a church service, except it's real dark. This whole religious service, and they got a cross, and it says MDNA. And it opens, and they have monks, and they're doing the sign of the cross, and out comes Madonna. Disgusting. The key symbol of the Christian faith, it's on top of all the churches, is now, you know, some kind of a tawdry entrance for Madonna. That, now, was the official position of the United States, expressed by our Secretary of State or anybody else, that was disgusting and reprehensible? No. My children, not longer than a month ago, went to see the Book of Mormon on Broadway, big Broadway show that mocks the Mormon faith. And you don't have to look very far. On South Park, Jesus is kind of a goofy stoner. On Saturday Night Live, Jesus walks into the locker room and talks to Tim Tebow. I mean, is this mocking Christianity? Probably. But where is the outrage from the official statements from the government? The reason is not the content. I mean, so there's religions being mocked in this country all the time. It's not the content. So what is it about? Its purpose is to appease. So the greatest nation on earth, according to most, certainly the most powerful military nation that has ever existed on earth, is cringing in front of a bunch of religious fanatics. They never use that word. A bunch of religious fanatics who are totally irrational. They went and attacked the German embassy over this. So that is my beef, that Hillary Clinton, as one of the highest officials of the government of the United States, offers some cringing apology to these outrageous nutcases. And the president of Egypt, Morsi, he's not really all that worried about firebombs and violence and all that stuff. He demands that whoever made this film be brought to justice. Now, what we ought to say is, whatever pretext, whatever reason you think you have for attacking us, we're going to respond. So get ready. I remembered this. This is going on too long, you think?
No, it's fine. Okay. I have equal time. And
of course you do.
I'm just listening, and I think you've made one good point so far.
Okay,
but go ahead.
Okay. This is...
Actually, several good points, but go ahead.
Okay. Where is it? Because I've got the precise quote here, Bob, and it is
from
really, really very good. This is something I remembered from The West Wing. And Martin Sheen played the president, Jed Bartlett. And somebody had attacked some Americans. And they're trying to decide what to do about it. Here's what Jed Bartlett says. He was a professor of history. I don't know if you remember the TV series. It was on a long time ago. Very well done. Did you know that 2,000 years ago, a Roman citizen could walk across the face of the known world free of the fear of molestation? He could walk across the earth unharmed, cloaked only in the protection of his words, civis Romanus, I am a Roman citizen. So great was the retribution of Rome, universally certain, should any harm befall even one of its citizens, that's why they were, now, look at what, let's judge it by its effects. What has this cringing apology accomplished? As Dr. Phil would say, how's that working for you? We in the United States read that as, well, it's normal political correctness, and we kind of count it. Oh, and every religion is worthy of respect. How can that be? Some of them have got to be totally false. Where we just respect our religion, we respect people of faith, and respect everything, and nobody are hurting anybody's feelings. It's the constant pap you hear on television. So in the United States, it's read as just ordinary pablum. In the Muslim world, I suspect, I've never even been there, but I suspect they're reading it that. So these Americans agree that it's blasphemous and wrong. They're just too weak to do anything about it. How is that working for us? Did that help anything?
All right, so what would you have done?
I would have said either nothing or said, you know, whatever you're using as a pretext for this outrage, it will not go unnoticed and will not go unpunished by the United States. And what I would have done when the Egyptian army, which is the only thing it's ever good at is knocking the crap out of civilians. Yeah, it's the only thing it's ever done. They didn't do well against the Israelis.
6 days.
Yeah. Say, we're paying you to have this army, and the army isn't even protecting our embassy. Do not stand by the mailbox for the next check, because it's not coming. That $1 billion, forget about it. And another thing, we're going to issue notice to all Americans at the State Department that if you're considering being a tourist in Egypt, think twice. That's what I'd have done. I ought to be president.
Yeah, no, well, I mean,
I couldn't be elected.
But let's back up just a couple of steps. I think you have extrapolated from what we are seeing to assume that this is a generalized Muslim systemic reaction and problem. Yeah. And I think a handful of people have been agitated by the extreme aspect of the Muslim community or Muslim world to demonstrate in this fashion, to create the impression that the fight is between the Muslims and the United States. Yeah. And I don't think that that's the case. I mean, I think...
you make a good point. Yeah. No doubt most Muslims are peaceful.
And I think what's caused the problem is best caused some of the problem. This is from the New York Times. I'm just going to read you this author, and it says, culture clash underlies riots at American embassies. And I mean, you could say, well, it's a liberal right or whatever, but just the substance of what's being said. I just want to read it and ask you what you think. It says, Mr. Muhammad, the religious scholar that they're quoting here, said, our prophet is more dear to us than our family and our nation. Let's just leave that aside for a second, because that's a very generalized statement that may not be true anyway. It's certainly not true of everybody. But he said, others said, this author said, others said that the outpouring of outrage against the video had built up over a long period of perceived denigrations of Muslims and their faith by the United States or its military, which are detailed extensively in the Arab news media. The invasion of Iraq on a discredited pretext, the images of abuse from Abu Ghraib prison, the burning or desecrations of the Koran by troops in Afghanistan, and they point, this pastor in Florida, detentions without trial at Guantanamo Bay, the denial of visas to prominent Muslim intellectuals, the death of Muslim civilians as collateral damage in drone strikes, even political campaigns against the specter of Islamic law inside the United States. Quote, this is not the first time that Muslim beliefs are being insulted or Muslims humiliated. I think that latter is important, said Imad Shaheen, a political scientist at the American University in Cairo. Egyptian officials said that some non-Salafis, I think is the proper, that's the extreme portion of the Muslim community, Islamic community in Egypt. And they're the ones, I think, that control like about 20% of the population, maybe a little bit more than that, involved in the embassy attacks, confessed to receiving payments although no payer has been identified. But after the first afternoon, the next 3 days of protests were dominated by a relatively small number of teenagers and young men, including diehard soccer fans known as ultras. They appeared to have been motivated mainly by the opportunity to attack the police, whom they revile. So I'm saying it is a more complicated, and you've mentioned this earlier, I think a much more nuanced problem. So here, the Secretary of State...
These are all very good points. I mean, these are all things... Abu Ghraib and the detentions at Guantanamo, all things that legitimately would inspire some...
They did mention Bagram Prison. I mean, and that's even as bad as Abu Ghraib. So,
apparently.
So my point is there are people who are using this as an igniter for a very focused protest by a very small number of people. And so for the President of the United States to do a George W. Bush, bring them on, I'm going to kick their ass.
Well, that wasn't my
but I'm saying
response.
that response, which is pervasive on talk radio and from the far right now, is we're big ass kickers and we're going to go kick ass.
There's nobody.
Everybody in Egypt?
Yeah, what are you going to do? Just fire missiles at a few random Muslims?
But what you did say, which I totally agreed with, is this has been done against a United States ambassador in a country in which we should be able to rely on the military to protect the sanctity of that embassy. And the fact that it didn't happen should bring sanctions against Egypt. I agree with that, 100%.
You know, well, we think a lot of our flag. If you've ever been to a baseball game, you know how we revere the flag. They're burning the flag like crazy, not a hint of anything about anything.
Another good point. Another good
point. So where are we? I think we agree then that you wouldn't, if you were in charge, have made the Hillary Clinton apology that hurting feelings about religion is. This is on the day this is going on September 11th or September 12th.
I would not have done that. I think it was a mistake. I think your comment that maybe sometimes you say nothing and you reflect. But the problem was, as soon as Obama said anything, Romney was immediately saying that was a pacifism and we need to do this and we need to do that, where Obama was saying, let's just sort of keep our head together until we figure out what we're going to do next, which I think is the more...
But that was after there was an apology, and that was offensive. I mean, I really
I agree.
Felt bad that Hillary Clinton was the spokesman for the United States.
I agree. I think we don't apologize for insanity here, that somebody produces this ridiculous film.
And they go nuts. And we apologize? When all these things that I discussed happened, there was a flood of apologies from the victims. Never did you hear an Arab leader say, some of these nutcases did vile things. Maybe they were free, but generally speaking, you didn't hear that.
No, you did not.
You know, and we apologize for that. You know, they just went completely nuts over some religious thing, and we have to apologize for that. We want to make amends. You don't hear that. It's just, punish the wrongdoers and the blasphemers.
I think saying nothing was the best course.
Yeah.
If it was the straw that broke the camel's back for the extreme, the Safalis or whoever these people are, that they are extreme political party in Egypt, if that's who's behind it and they're paying protesters and there are things like that, we can get to the bottom of that and we can focus on who's responsible. But the idea that we just have this a public apology, like we're at fault because somebody published something on, well, for all we know, it was the extremists that sponsored it to get it produced, to produce the reaction, which is entirely possible.
Somebody translated it into Arabic.
Right.
I mean, because you got to know that most of those scrubby-looking protesters were not English readers.
Could not read
Probably
it.
not.
Could not read or understand it. Well, we're going to take a short break, and we shall return with some other interesting things about, we hope, interesting conversation. I hope you participate by sending us emails and faxes and voicemail messages. By the way, we'll have that information on the screen. But when we come back, we're going to talk about Amendment 8 and a few other local items. So I hope you'll stay with us, and we'll be back in a minute.